served 450 people this morning, 1,500 pancakes. You know that? Isn't that amazing? Gosh. You guys either like us a lot or you like free stuff. I have my sweetheart here with me this morning. You know, Ann and I met, we actually saw each other in elementary school, but don't really, know whether we made contact at that point. But she remembers. But in high school, we made contact. And this is my sweetheart. We married, well, how many years ago? 42 years ago. She's the mom of our 5 sons, our 16 grandkids. Say hi to Ann. There we go.
I like that better. Good morning, and thank you all for coming. This is amazing, and it was a pleasure to serve many of you pancakes this morning. You might imagine, raising 5 boys, that I've done this before. As a matter of fact, believe it or not, I served pancakes nearly every morning before the kids went to school. I just got up and Mitt used to joke, it's time to make the donuts, from that old Dunkin' Donuts ad. And that was me. I would always get up early and get the boys off. I miss having my boys at home. But I do love watching and seeing how wonderful they are now as husbands and fathers. And it was last Father's Day when I was thinking so fondly of how blessed I am in my life to have my children being such good fathers. And I am grateful because they had such an extraordinary example. Mitt has been a wonderful influence, obviously, in our lives, in our family. And in the difficult times when I was frustrated and Mitt was traveling and he would call home and I would be exasperated, he would remind me of something very important. He would say, Ann, you're doing something much more important than what I'm doing. And what you're doing is lasting and it's eternal. What I'm doing is temporary. So he gave me that encouragement and that nod of, yes, this is the most important thing in the world for us. So our family is the center of our life. I've seen Mitt in so many situations. Obviously, as a family man, he's the most important thing in my life. But I've seen him also in difficult situations with business. And one thing I know is the guy knows how to do a turnaround. And if there's ever been a time, ever, that the country needs a turnaround, it's now. So why don't we think about electing somebody that knows how the economy works and has had the experience and actually will figure out how to get it done.
Amen.
There you go, Steve.
Thanks, sweetie. I should just sit down, I know. That's sort of it. I have to tell you a story. As you know, I mentioned we had 5 boys, and she is right. One of our boys, Ben, wanted pancakes every morning. Each boy wanted something different, so she was like the short order cook. After our last son went to college, I knew she'd be very, very emotional. We were leaving the airport, and I wondered what was going through her mind, because she was very quiet. And I turned to her and I said, Ann, what are you thinking? And she turned back and she said, Mitt, you have had your last home-cooked meal. She relented. I want to say thanks to you for being here on Labor Day and welcoming Ann and me again to Manchester. It's wonderful to be here. I'm thinking of family this morning, as I'm sure you are, as your families have gathered. I'm thinking about Ann's dad. Ann's dad was born in Wales. His father was a coal miner. His dad said, if we stay here, it's the pick and shovel for you. And he decided to take his family and try and come to the greatest land on earth, America. And he came to the United States, and they didn't have a lot of money. And so they said, we see in the United States it's a huge advantage to be able to get a college degree, but there wasn't enough money to send 4 kids to college because he had 4 children. And so they all got together and had a family council. They decided they would all work and save their money, and the one who was the brightest among them would go to college, and the others would pay for that person to go to college. Can you imagine that? And that was Ann's dad. He was the guy, luckily for him, who was the brightest guy, according to his brothers and sisters. They said, okay, we're going to finance him going to college, and they all saved. They put him through college. He went to General Motors Institute of Technology, where you go to school sometime and you work sometime, back and forth. He was able to go through college and ultimately started a little engineering firm and made parts for ships for the Navy and so forth. Ultimately, he hired his brothers to come work for him, of course, and the sacrifice and the commitment to family and the belief that this was a country where the circumstance of your birth, being a coal miner, wasn't going to keep you from realizing your dreams. What an amazing land we live in. The founders of this country had a vision which is really remarkable because they understood not just the power of political freedom, which is the right for us to choose who will represent us in government, but also they believed in personal freedoms, in economic freedom, where we could choose not just our representatives, but choose our course in life, and establish an economy where the circumstance of birth did not keep us from realizing our dreams. Today in Washington, unfortunately, we have people who are convinced that not free people, but large government is the course of America's future, and they're wrong. We're going to get government to finally be the small enterprise it should be and allow the American people to realize their dreams once again. Now, I don't happen to think Barack Obama's a bad guy. I just don't think he has a clue. And having never worked in the private sector, never having had a real job, it's not a surprise he doesn't know how to create a real job. And so he came into office and said, oh, I know how to create jobs. I'll spend billions and billions, trillions of dollars. Do you realize this president, by the end of his first term, will have accumulated more debt than all the prior presidents of the United States combined? And what's the product of that? We still have over 9% of our people out of work. 25 million people are either out of work or stopped looking for work or are in part-time jobs that need full-time work. Last month you saw 0 jobs created. The American people have 0 confidence in a president that creates 0 jobs. And on Thursday, he's going to be making his job speech. Does that excite you? It doesn't me. I mean, I've seen version 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and they haven't worked. And the reality is that he'll do what he's done in the past, which is he'll take out a little cup and put some gasoline on it and try and throw it in the fire to get things going. But you know what? We don't need a little gasoline here and there. We need some logs in that fire. We need to rebuild America's economy, to put people back to work, to make sure that our economy leads the world. I know something about building and turning things around. I spent my life in the private sector, solving real problems, working with businesses that did business around the world. I was in business for 25 years, then I got asked to go off and run the Olympics. You may remember back in Salt Lake City in 2002, the games were in trouble, and I got asked by the governor there to come out and help run the games. And thank you. And there were some folks who said we ought to give the games back, send them to Austria, because we couldn't do it after all the scandals and the problems. So we did do it. We turned it around. Thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of people came together, volunteered in the American way to get those games on track. And then after that was over, I was asked to come to a state nearby. I'm surprised you let me in this morning. You got to get some border security here in New Hampshire, you know that. But you let me across the border this morning, and so I'm here. And we had a tough time in Massachusetts, you may recall. We were losing jobs every month. When I came in, we had a budget that was out of whack by about $3 billion, it looked like, for the coming year. We balanced the budget every year, put in place a rainy day fund, started creating jobs every month. We did the job we were expected to do, turned it around. And the nation needs a turnaround. We need to get back to the principles that made us strong, not to make us more like Europe, but to make us more like the America that we know and love and that made us who we are. I love this country. I got to tell you, I love freedom. I love freedom. I love America's freedom. I love the fact that we have opportunity in America. I love free enterprise. I even love capitalism. Look, our brand of capitalism being copied by other nations and being promoted by us around the world over the decades, over the centuries, is lifting people from poverty. It's the only antidote to poverty that's ever worked. Freedom, letting people choose their course in life. I love our Constitution. I love all the amendments. I even like the 10th. The 10th says this. It says, effectively this, it says, those powers not specifically granted to the federal government are reserved by the people and the states. This president has done something which is, in many respects, counter to the spirit of that amendment. He said, I'm going to have the federal government intrude itself in your life with Dodd-Frank and with card check and with cap and trade and perhaps the worst example of a federal power grab, Obamacare. If I'm president, we're going to get rid of that on day one. I just want to say one more thing, and that is something about the spirit of this country on a day like this. I know we have a number of veterans in this room, or on this stage, or on this balcony. I'm sure hope they put some big beams underneath this balcony, you know that? And I had a real privilege at the end of my term as governor. I was invited to go to Afghanistan and Iraq and go from base to base to meet our troops from the National Guard. And there were maybe 10 or 12 or 15, typically men, but some women as well, in the Guard. I'd visit them, and after I'd been there a little while, I said, hey, look, when I get home, if you want me to call your spouse or your parents, take out a piece of paper, write down your name, their names, and the phone number at home, and I'll call them when I get home. And when I left Afghanistan and Iraq, I had 63 pieces of paper. I thought, that's going to take a long time to make all those calls. I got home the night before Memorial Day. So on Memorial Day morning, I started making the calls. I thought I'd bang out 2 or 3 of them before the kids got up and we started having a little vacation day together. And on the third call, as I recall, the woman who answered the phone said, oh, Governor Romney, I thought that might be you calling. I said, what do you mean? And she said, well, you called a couple of homes this morning and they emailed their husbands and wives that are in the theater of conflict, and then they emailed their buddies throughout Afghanistan and Iraq to say you were calling, and then they emailed us to tell us to expect your call. So I called 63 homes on Memorial Day. And I have to tell you, I was nervous about the calls, because this was before the surge. This was when Harry Reid was saying that we had failed in Iraq. This is when Joe Biden was saying that we should divide the country in 3. And so I expected some of the people I called to say, Governor, why is my loved one still there? Why can't they come home? We failed, according to the Senate Majority Leader. And in 63 calls, not one complaint. In 63 calls. And every call I would end by saying roughly these words: on behalf of our country and on behalf of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, I want to express my appreciation to you for the sacrifice your loved one is making and the sacrifice your family is making in defending our great country. And in every case, the person on the other end of the line either interrupted me or when I was finished said roughly these words: no, Governor, it's an honor to be able to sacrifice for the nation, which is the greatest land on earth, the hope of the earth. This is a great and glorious land. We have among us pretty good people who are willing to serve. A number of state reps here today, state senators. I see Mayor Ted Gatzis way back there. Looks like you're going to squeak through with another victory, Ted. I see your signs everywhere. A good man. I'm absolutely convinced that given the patriotism of the American people, that despite the challenges we face, the debt, the unfunded liabilities, jihadists that want to kill us, Iran becoming nuclear on a track to do so, Russia resurgent, China becoming a global power. Despite those challenges, I'm convinced that with patriotic people, as long as we're led by leaders who will tell the truth and who will live with integrity and who actually know how and where to lead us, that we'll remain the great land we've always been. I love America. I'll fight for America. We'll fight together. We'll take America back. We'll make sure that America remains as it's always been, the hope of the earth. Thanks, you guys. Great to be with you this morning. You guys are the best. I don't know if anybody has a question here this morning. Right over here. There are a couple of questions. Please, yes.